mean, you know what I'd like to ask you about? One of the greatest games in Seahawk history. I don't know what your pro team is. You can tell us. If it's Seahawks, you can tell us.
Tell the truth.
I was raised a Green Bay Packers fan, but I will
wonder
say
why you like going to Green Bay so much.
Yeah, they don't even have cheerleaders.
Don't even have cheerleaders, and sometimes we need to. No, I'm just kidding. No, they don't have cheerleaders, and they don't have a bathroom on the sidelines, and that's very, very difficult, especially when you're
gross.
And you have to go tinkle.
It's the worst.
What was I gonna say? What was I saying? Oh, raised a Packers fan. I lose my train of thought quite a bit, but it's funny. You start becoming a huge fan of the guys and their like organizations or coaches, people with stories. I mean, I was thinking about Russell, when I was getting ready for this today, and I remember the night of the draft. And because I had covered Russell all throughout college, I remember sitting in Washington, D.C. with my dad, and we were going to, I think, we were in town for something in D.C., and we were waiting, and finally his name was called. And my dad kept saying all throughout the night, I'm so happy for Russell Wilson. Well, then Russell Wilson tore my dad's heart out of his chest after
wow.
And that emotional, win, obviously in Seattle. And I remember my dad texting me going, I feel like I'm going to puke, but I'm so happy for Russell. You cheer for the guys and the stories and so forth. So yeah, I'm a fan of all the people that I have relationships with, and they're good for me. Jeff, what's your question?
The question was, take us back to one of my favorite Seahawks games ever. A lot of Seahawks fans are obsessed with this game. The 2013 NFC Championship game against the San Francisco 49ers. Boo, the trashiest team in the world. So I want to know what Russ remembers from the game and what you remember from the game. There was a lot. I'll ask you about the little Richard Sherman moment that I wasn't too happy about. But I want to know about the game. What do you remember about the game?
All right, Russ, you want to take it?
Well, I remember winning. That's all that matters, just the celebration of it all. But it was a crazy matchup. They were so good. I remember my rookie year. I remember my second year, and walking into I had played some great teams in college. I mean, playing, at Wisconsin, played at NC State. I played against some of the best college players and guys who still play in this league today. But I'll never forget the first time my rookie year, I had to strap on the pads and had to go against the 49ers. I was like, who the hell are these guys? Like, you had Alden, you had Justin Smith, you had all these guys who were just great players. You had the linebackers and Willis and Bowman. You had such great DBs. I mean, but I'll never forget the second year we actually played them, and in my second year we played them at home in the NFC Championship game, and just the matchups and the battle that was throughout the whole entire game. I think it may have been that game, but I think that for like one of the first plays of the game, I got crushed by Alden right in the chest and knocked the ball out even. But obviously we went for it on fourth down and double count, and they went off sides, threw a touchdown to Jermaine Kearse. And then next thing you know, all I know is the ball was tipped up in the air by Sherm, and the rest was history. So that was a good night for sure.
I think before even we get to that game, sorry, Jeff, I'll take over now. Who's the broadcaster here? I did a playoff game of yours before that. Was it the season before? It was the RG3 game where he went down.
We played in Washington, actually.
My memory of that game was I just come to Fox and I got moved to the A team to do the playoffs. And I don't know how much you knew Joe and Troy. And I remember you walking in, and I, high and mighty, I was like, I covered him in college. He's amazing. He's such a good dude. Like, you guys will love him. And I have a picture of the post-game interview, and that was just so special because I obviously had known you before, and I was like, wow, how this puppy has come full circle. Now to get to your game.
First of all, I need this picture. Whatever picture you have. I have
it. One of my favorites. I already know my coat I was wearing too. What?
He ain't no puppy, Erin. All right? We don't call him a puppy.
He's not. It was very special. But let's see. What I remember from that game is Richard Sherman, and there were so many parts to that like obviously it's hilarious. I'm just ticked off I never got a Snickers commercial out of it. I tried to sell it so badly to Mars, and they weren't listening to me, and whatever.
You hear that, Snickers? She needs a commercial here.
And even when he went to San Francisco, I tried to resell it where it was like, he's angry, he's yelling at me, I give him a Snickers, and he's in a 49ers uniform. Fine, I'll make up commercials now too. Add it to my repertoire.
Well, I know you've addressed it many times, but maybe people that haven't heard that you've addressed it, this is our opportunity here on Danger Talk. But I'm a fan of football and women, So when
he's a huge Seahawks fan, just so you know,
the biggest. And so when he said that to you, and he was kind of shouting and all jacked up from the game, just whatever. I think of you as like this boss, like you're not like the gals I know, So I remember thinking like that wasn't a big deal, and then the way it got ran with. I just kept thinking like they're making her sound like she's some delicate flower. Like she's been in this business for a long time. She probably doesn't care. So what did you care? Were you offended? Were you like, hey, why did he yell at me? Or
no, honestly, I thought it was awesome. The only thing that many things I've said this before, one of the things that I was annoyed about was myself, shocker, in the ballroom, but I was, because I remember when it was happening that I thought to myself, holy cow, my next question better be a good one. And I'm still trying to follow up with what he's saying. But I had known that he was not a fan of Michael Crabtree. He had discussed that in a production meeting with myself and the announcers. So I wasn't shocked. But what I was worried about as that was happening is, holy crap, what am I asking for a second question? And I don't want people to think he's yelling at me, because he's not, because he's awesome. So then when he stopped and he said, don't you ever talk about me again? I was like, who's talking to me? Now, as I've discussed with other people, that wasn't a terrible question, but what I want to like blow my brains out about is my stupid look on my face when I did it. I was talking about you. Like, why do you have to ask it that way? Just say, I should have done it over. And then what is not in my comfort zone to do, I think maybe at that time, but would be now, is right away they pulled me off of him, and I wanted to ask a follow-up question about actually what it was going to be like to then, be matched up against the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl, playing in New York, and what does that moment mean to him? And they just said, go to Joe, because they panicked, and I should have been like, no, I got one more, and this is what it is. So I'm mad at myself.
Well, I think first of all, I think the moment was just so absolutely nuts. I mean, the stadium, I couldn't hear the people next to me. It was so crazy and so loud. I just remember Colin throwing the ball up, and I'm like, they just tried Sherm, and he goes back and tips it back up in the air, and Malcolm catches it. Just the electricity in the stadium. I think everybody was losing. I don't even think. I think everybody in that moment was just chaotic. I've never been. I've been in some crazy games and crazy matchups and loud stadiums, but there's nothing like Seattle being in that stadium.
No.
And I wasn't mad about it at all. I was like, no, Richard Sherman's my guy. I love him. Erin Andrews doesn't care. But then the second that Richard Sherman went to San Francisco, I was like, man, that guy's the worst. And he yelled at Erin Andrews. I don't need this.
No, but what's interesting is I was just thinking to myself, my gosh, I didn't interview Russell after that game, but in an NFC Championship situation, I'm not allowed, because we knew that Russell was going to go up on the trophy stand, probably with Terry Bradshaw. So they were like, Russell's off limits. Get somebody else. And I was just thinking, why didn't I talk to you? But that's why.
Well, one of my favorite moments about that game too was being up there on stage with Terry Bradshaw. I remember Paul Allen was standing next to me.
Aww.
And I remember them playing Frank Sinatra and everything. I was talking to Terry, and I started asking him. I was so zoned in the moment. I said, Terry, how do we get this done? How do we win the whole thing? And he started giving me this advice. I'm not going to tell everybody the advice, because I'm still in the midst of trying to win another Super Bowl right now. So I'm not going to give you all the secrets right now. Okay, Erin, this will be maybe your next interview for me. But I'll never forget just that moment, that stillness. As everything was going so chaotic, I felt so still in that moment. And I think life flashes in front of you, where everything you've worked for, it's right here. It's right now. And so as an athlete, as a player, as somebody who ever wants to be great at anything, I think there's these moments in time that you fully capture and you fully become still. And that was one of them. I remember Terry and Jeff, Terry really well too, actually. But I think that moment of stillness was really pure for me. And then next thing I know, I'm singing Frank Sinatra out loud, and Paul Allen kind of raps, kind of grabs my arm and is like, "You like Frankie, Frank? You like Frankie?" And I said, "Yeah, my dad used to sing to him all the time." Crazy story. The next morning I get up, the doorbell rings, and all of a sudden I have this massive box of Frank Sinatra stuff. And it just, those moments like that are just really special, and I think back to that. So that game really meant a lot to me, obviously my career and everything else, but I think also too, just how everything comes to fruition, everything you've ever worked for. And so
Yeah.
that was a special night. And I'm glad Richard Sherman tipped that ball up, that's for sure.
Wow.
So that was
Was
pretty
that
cool.
ball catchable, by the way? Like, can we just go back and talk about it? Because I always think about Richard Sherman's play and the interview. Would he have been able to get that? Was he
Talking
going
about
to get
Crabtree?
that?
You talking
Yeah.
about Crabtree?
Crabtree.
Yeah, I mean, Crabtree's got you've seen him in college and all the things
Yeah.
he's done in the NFL. I mean, he's got unbelievable, catching skills, ball skills to catch the football. So for Sherm to be able to do that and turn the way he did and knock it backwards and knock it up. And, ironically, I think Sherm did that actually several weeks before in New York. We were already beaten, the Giants pretty good, but they threw a ball down the right sideline, very similar to that, I believe. Eli did, and Sherm tipped it back, and I think Earl had caught it, I believe, but it looked very similar. That was several weeks before, and ironically, I had told Coach Carroll, early that week, I said, the crazy thing is we get to play in New York, and hopefully we get to come back to New York again. And sure enough, we were able to go back to New York again. So those moments are like that are really special.